The news hit the chain of command like a hammer hitting glass. Within 30 minutes of Danny's radio call, Sergeant Lena Marsh had fought her way back through the relay station with Cole and Tara, found Danny standing guard over 2 unconscious Valori soldiers and one very calm alien female locked behind a containment field, and called it in. Captain Nick Guerrero was aboard the Starward Drift, the small human patrol ship orbiting HFY 4, when the report arrived. He read it twice, then he read it a third time. Then he sat down and stared at the wall for a full minute before picking up the secure channel to Regional Command. "Sir," he said, "one of my corporals has captured a high-value Valori target. We believe it may be their Empress." There was a long silence on the other end. "Repeat that," said the voice of Colonel Hank Perkins. Guerrero repeated it. Perkins asked him if he was joking. Perkins asked him if the corporal was mentally stable. Guerrero said he seemed fine, just confused. Perkins told him to lock down the entire moon and not let anyone in or out until further notice. Within 4 hours, the report had climbed all the way to Admiral Patricia Dunn at Fleet Command on Earth. Within 6 hours, every major alien civilization in the known galaxy had intercepted fragments of the transmission and was asking the same question. Did the humans really just capture the Valori Empress? The answer was yes, and they had done it by accident. The galactic reaction was immediate and enormous. The Valori Dominion had existed for over 10,000 years. They controlled more star systems than most species could count. Their military was one of the largest and most feared forces in the galaxy, and in all that time, across all those millennia of war and politics and expansion, no enemy had ever captured a Valori ruler. Ever. Now a human corporal had done it with a flashbang grenade and a lucky elbow. The Krythene Trade Confederation sent a formal inquiry to Earth's government, asking very politely whether humanity understood what it had done. The Molvari Republic pulled its ambassadors from 3 border systems as a precaution. The Scythian Collective, a species known for being emotionally flat, reportedly described the situation as concerning, which their diplomats later clarified was the strongest word in their language. Back on HFY 4, Danny Voss sat in the relay station's small break room, eating a protein bar and staring at the table. Around him, heavily armed Marines were setting up defensive positions. A full company had been dropped from orbit within 2 hours of the report. Engineers were reinforcing the building. Technicians were studying the Valori equipment. And everyone who walked past Danny looked at him like he was either a hero or a bomb that had not gone off yet. Lena sat across from him, her arms crossed. "You fell through a floor," she said. "I fell through a floor," Danny agreed. "And then you hit a button. I hit a button. And now you have started an interstellar incident." Danny took another bite of his protein bar. "Seems like it." Lena shook her head slowly. "I have been in the service 10 years. 10 years. Nothing interesting ever happens. And then you show up." Danny did not have a good answer for that, so he just kept eating. The Valori response came fast and loud. Warlord Kethis, the most powerful military commander in the Dominion, mobilized the entire 6th Fleet. 800 warships, carriers, destroyers, dreadnoughts, and support vessels, all moving in a massive formation toward human space. Kethis broadcast a message on every open channel, in every language the Valori had ever decoded. The message was simple: return the Empress, return her now, return her unharmed, or the Valori would burn every human world to bare rock. Humanity had 43 warships in the entire region, 43 against 800. The math was not complicated, and it was not in humanity's favor. Admiral Dunn called an emergency session with Earth's government and military leadership. The room was full of the most powerful people in human civilization, and none of them had a good option. Returning the Empress immediately would show weakness. Every species in the galaxy would see it as proof that humanity could be pushed around. Future aggression would be guaranteed. But keeping her would start a war that humanity could not win. Not yet, not with 43 ships. The only path forward was negotiation. Find a way to return the Empress that gave humanity something in exchange. A treaty, reparations, recognition. Something that would make the galaxy see this not as a kidnapping, but as diplomacy backed by the most absurd stroke of luck in military history. But to negotiate, they needed the Empress alive and cooperative. And so far, the only person she had not tried to intimidate into silence was the soldier who had accidentally captured her. Danny received his new orders from Captain Guerrero personally. He was to accompany the Empress during transport to Calyx Point, a neutral station where negotiations would take place. He would be her handler, her guard, and if necessary, her translator of human intentions. Danny looked at Guerrero like he had just been told to juggle live grenades. "Sir, I am a corporal," he said. "I fix relay stations and walk patrols. I do not do diplomacy." "You do now," Guerrero said. "Why me? There are officers, specialists, people who actually trained for this kind of thing." Guerrero leaned forward. "Because in the 6 hours since you captured her, the Empress has refused to speak to anyone except you. She will not talk to our intelligence officers. She will not talk to our diplomats." She shut down Colonel Perkins with a single look. "But when you bring her food, she watches you. When you speak, she listens. I do not know why. Maybe she thinks you are interesting. Maybe she thinks you are too stupid to be a threat. I do not care. She responds to you, and right now, that makes you the most valuable soldier in this entire operation." Danny sat there for a long time after Guerrero left. He looked at his protein bar. He looked at the ceiling. He thought about the recruiter in Ohio, who had told him the military would be a great opportunity to see the galaxy. He was seeing it all right. 2 days later, Danny Voss boarded the heavy cruiser Faulkner's Wake, alongside a prisoner who ruled 1,000 worlds, and headed for a negotiation that would decide the future of his entire species. He brought extra protein bars. It seemed like it was going to be a long trip. The Faulkner's Wake was a heavy cruiser, thick-hulled and built for punishment. It was not comfortable, it was not pretty, and it smelled like recycled air and engine grease. Danny had been on worse ships, but not many. The journey to Calyx Point would take 6 days. Every ship humanity could spare flew escort around the Faulkner's Wake, forming a protective shell of metal and guns. It was not enough to stop the Valori if they attacked, but it was enough to slow them down and buy time for a retreat. That was the honest truth of humanity's military position. They could not win a straight fight, so everything was built around being fast, clever, and hard to kill. The Empress had been given the ship's diplomatic lounge, which had been converted into a holding suite. The furniture was removed and replaced with a simple bed, a table, and 2 chairs. The walls were lined with force field emitters instead of locks. It looked like a hotel room designed by someone who did not trust the guest. Danny's quarters were right next door. He had a cot, a footlocker, and a view of the hallway. His job was simple in theory and impossible in practice. Keep the Empress secure, keep her comfortable, and keep her talking. For the first 2 days, she did none of those things. Valithara sat in her suite in complete silence. She did not eat, she did not sleep, or if she did it standing up, which Danny found deeply unsettling. She simply stood or sat, perfectly still, her dark eyes following anyone who entered the room. When Danny brought meals, synthesized Valori nutrition blocks that Lieutenant Grace Aldrin, the ship's science officer, had spent hours creating from captured supplies, the Empress looked at the food, looked at Danny, and said nothing. Danny left the food and walked out each time. Something in his gut told him that pushing this particular person would be like pushing a mountain. You could do it, but the mountain would not move, and you would just look foolish. On the 3rd day, everything changed. Danny brought the morning meal, and set it on the table as usual. He turned to leave, and the Empress spoke. "You are not a warrior." Her voice was low and clear, and her English was perfect. Not accented, not awkward. Perfect. Danny stopped and turned around. "No, ma'am," he said. "I am a corporal. You defeated 2 of my royal guard. I got lucky." Luck is a concept for species that do not understand probability. Danny thought about that for a second. Then I really do not understand probability. Something shifted in her expression. It was small, barely visible, but it was there. Not a smile. The Valori did not smile, but something close to it. Something like recognition. From that moment, the silence ended. Over the next 3 days, Danny and Valathara talked. Not constantly, not easily, but steadily, the way 2 people talk when they are trapped together and have nothing to lose by being honest. Valathara asked questions, dozens of them. She wanted to know about human families, human governments, human wars. She wanted to know why humans formed bonds with animals. She wanted to know why Danny had joined the military if he did not want to fight. She wanted to know why humans laughed when they were nervous. Danny answered as honestly as he could. He told her about growing up in Ohio, about his mother who worked at a grocery store, and his father who repaired trucks. He told her about signing up because a recruiter promised him money for college and a chance to see the stars. He told her he was afraid most of the time, but had learned to work through it. Valathara listened to all of it with an intensity that made Danny uncomfortable. It was like being studied by something ancient and vast, something that was trying to fit him into a framework that did not have a category for what he was. "In the Dominion," she said on the 4th day, "every individual is born into a role. Workers build, soldiers fight, commanders lead, the Empress rules. There is no choice, there is no wandering. Each Valori knows its purpose from the moment it opens its eyes." "That sounds efficient," Danny said. "It is. And it is also a cage." That surprised him. He had not expected her to say that. "Your species is the opposite," she continued. "You are born with no role, no caste, no certainty. You stumble through your lives making choices with incomplete information, failing and recovering and failing again. By every model the Dominion has ever built, a species like yours should have destroyed itself long ago." "And yet here we are," Danny said. "And yet here you are." On the 5th day, Valathara told Danny something that changed everything. The Valori were not just a civilization. They were a hive mind. Not in the crude way that humans imagined, where everyone thought the same thoughts. It was more like a vast network of shared feeling and awareness, a web that connected every Valori to every other Valori, with the Empress at the center. She was the anchor, the stabilizer. Without her presence in the network, the web began to fray. "Your people are already feeling it," Danny said. He had seen the reports. Intercepted Valori communications were becoming erratic. Ships in Kethis' fleet were breaking formation. Some had fired on each other. "Yes," Valathara said, "that is what happens when you take the mind from the body. We are not trying to destroy your people. And yet, you are. Every hour I am separated from the Dominion, the network weakens. Warlord Kethis is losing coherence. His soldiers are losing coherence. Soon they will not be an army. They will be a mob. And a mob with 800 warships will not attack just your species. It will attack everything." Danny felt cold. He had known this was serious, but hearing it from her, in that calm and steady voice, made it real in a way that briefings and reports never could. He went straight to Captain Guerrero and told him what Valathara had said. Guerrero brought in Lieutenant Aldrin, who confirmed it. The data matched. The Valori fleet was destabilizing. If the Empress was not returned to her people soon, the entire region of the galaxy could fall into chaos. But there was something else. Something Valathara had not yet told the officers, something she had only hinted at with Danny. On the night before they arrived at Calyx Point, Danny sat across from her in the dim light of the holding suite. She looked tired, for the first time since he had met her. Not physically tired, something deeper. "The listening post," Danny said. "The one on HFY 4. You did not build it." "No," she said. "Kethis built it." "Yes. Without your permission. Without my knowledge. He built it to gather intelligence on your species, to provoke an incident, to start a war." Danny leaned forward. "Why would he want a war with us?" "Because war creates power, and power is what Kethis wants. He has been building his influence for decades. The Sixth Fleet answers to him, not to me. The listening post was one piece of a much larger plan, and you went to shut it down, alone, in secret, because I did not know how deep his network went. The 2 guards you fought were not mine. They were his. They were there to keep me contained while Kethis arranged events from orbit." Danny sat back in his chair. The truth settled over him like cold water. "I did not capture you," he said slowly. "I interrupted a coup." Valithara looked at him with those ancient dark eyes. "Yes," she said. Calyx Point was enormous. It was a ring-shaped station orbiting a dead star, built centuries ago by the Krythene, as a place where civilizations could settle their differences without destroying each other. The station was neutral ground, protected by ancient treaties, and enforced by the Krythene, who took their role as mediators very seriously. Danny had seen pictures of the station in training, but pictures did not prepare him for the real thing. The ring was so large that entire districts had formed inside it, each one home to diplomats, traders, spies, and travelers from dozens of alien species. The corridors were wide enough to drive a transport through, and the air smelled different in every section, filtered and adjusted for whatever species lived there. The human delegation arrived first. Ambassador Ruth Calloway led the team. She was a small woman with gray hair and steady hands, and she had spent 30 years negotiating treaties with species that could crush humanity without trying. Nothing surprised her, nothing rattled her. When she was briefed on the situation, she listened without expression, asked 3 precise questions, and immediately began planning. Her team included legal advisors, military liaisons, intelligence analysts, and a security detail of 20 Marines. Danny was technically part of the security detail, but everyone understood his real role. He was the bridge between humanity and the Empress. Warlord Kethis arrived 12 hours later. He brought 200 warships that parked themselves just outside the station's neutral zone, weapons powered and ready. The Krythene station masters sent him a formal warning about violating neutral space. Kethis acknowledged the warning and did not move his ships. His delegation boarded the station with 30 Valori soldiers and 5 senior officers. Danny watched them come through the docking bay from a viewing gallery above, and even from that distance he could see something was wrong. The Valori moved strangely. Their steps were uneven, their formations loose. 2 of the officers kept turning their heads in sharp, jerky motions, as if they were hearing sounds that were not there. One soldier walked into a wall and stood there for 3 seconds before correcting himself. The hive mind was breaking down. Danny could see it in their bodies. Without the Empress anchoring the network, every Valori was slowly losing the shared awareness that had guided their species for thousands of years. They were becoming individuals for the first time in their lives, and they had no idea how to handle it. Kethis himself was in the worst shape. He was larger than his officers, heavily armored, with a scarred crest that spoke of decades of combat. But his movements were wrong. He walked too fast, then too slow. His hands clenched and unclenched without pattern. His eyes darted constantly, never settling on anything for more than a second. He was falling apart, and he knew it. That made him dangerous. The negotiations began the next morning, in a large circular chamber at the center of the station. The room was designed to be neutral in every way. The same temperature, the same light, the same distance from every seat to the center. Calloway sat on one side with her team. Kethis sat on the other with his. Kethis spoke first. His voice was rough and unsteady. "Return the Empress, now, without conditions." Calloway did not blink. The Empress was found inside a covert intelligence facility, built within human territory. This is a direct violation of the non-aggression compact signed by both our species. Before we discuss her return, we need to discuss how a Valori listening post ended up hidden inside a human relay station. Kethis slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed through the chamber. "You hold our Empress as a hostage, and you dare speak of violations?" "We hold your Empress as a guest," Calloway said calmly. "She has been treated with respect and provided with everything she needs. Can you say the same about how the Dominion has treated our sovereignty?" The first session lasted 2 hours and accomplished nothing. Kethis demanded. Calloway deflected. Kethis threatened. Calloway asked questions. It was like watching someone try to argue with a river. The river did not fight back. It just kept flowing. Behind the scenes, Danny continued his conversations with Valithara. She was kept in a secure suite on the station's human-controlled section, guarded at all times, but given freedom to move within her rooms. She knew the negotiations were happening. She knew Kethis was leading the Valori side. And she knew something that Calloway needed to hear. "Kethis is not here to rescue me," Valithara told Danny on the second day of talks. "He is here to make sure I am never returned." Danny frowned. "What do you mean?" "If I go back to the Dominion, I will expose his treachery. The listening post, the unauthorized fleet movements, the soldiers he placed as my guards, all of it. He cannot allow that. His best outcome is that the negotiations fail and a war begins. In a war, I become a casualty, an unfortunate loss, and he becomes the new leader of the Dominion. So he wants the talks to collapse. He needs them to collapse." Danny brought this to Calloway that evening. She listened, her face still and unreadable, and then she asked Danny to leave the room, while she made several very quiet calls. What happened next took 3 days of careful, invisible work. Calloway's intelligence team reached out through back channels to Valori officers, who were known to be loyal to the Empress. They found them scattered across the Dominion, confused and frightened by the deteriorating hive mind, but still faithful. Through encrypted communications routed through Crythene relay networks, Calloway established contact with Matriarch Solara, the Empress's most trusted general, who had been quietly gathering loyal ships in a nebula 2 systems away from Calyx Point. The plan took shape. Instead of returning the Empress to Kethis, they would deliver her directly to Solara and the Loyalist fleet. This would bypass Kethis entirely, restore the hive mind under the Empress's control, and expose the warlord's treachery in one move. But the plan had a problem. Kethis was not stupid. On the 4th day of negotiations, he noticed the shift. Calloway's tone had changed. She was no longer stalling. She was no longer asking difficult questions. She was being agreeable, and that made him suspicious. That evening, Kethis pulled his delegation from the talks. He returned to his flagship and broadcast a single message to his fleet. Prepare for assault. The negotiations were over. 200 Valori warships powered their weapons and began moving toward Calyx Point. The Crythene station masters broadcast emergency warnings across all channels. Every ship in the sector began plotting escape routes. The human escort fleet, just 31 ships, formed a thin defensive line between the station and the approaching Valori armada. Inside the station, alarms began to wail. Danny was with Valithara when the red lights started flashing. She stood from her chair and looked at him, and for the first time since he had met her, he saw something in her eyes that was not calm, calculated control. It was anger. "He would rather burn this station than let me return," she said. Danny keyed his radio. "Sarge, we need a way out. Not the main docks. Something quiet." Lena's voice came back immediately, sharp and steady as always. "Already on it. Maintenance level 7. There is a Crythene courier ship in Service Bay 12. Small, fast, no weapons. Cole found it an hour ago." "That is our ride," Danny said. He looked at the Empress. "Can you run?" Valithara straightened to her full height. She towered over him by a full head. "I have ruled 1,000 worlds, Corporal. I can run." Danny almost smiled. Almost. "Then let us go." They ran. Danny led the way with his rifle up, moving through corridors that grew narrower and darker the deeper they went into the station's maintenance levels. Behind him came Valithara, moving with a speed and grace that reminded him she was not human, no matter how calmly she spoke his language. Lena ran at the rear, her weapon covering their backs. Cole was ahead, his console guiding them through a maze of service tunnels that smelled like coolant and old metal. Terra moved alongside the Empress, medkit on her hip, ready for anything. Above them, the battle had begun. Kethis' fleet opened fire on the human defensive line. 200 warships against 31. The math had not changed, and it was still terrible. But human ships were built differently than Valori ships. They were smaller, faster, and packed with electronic warfare systems that the Valori had never faced in full force before. Captain Guerrero commanded the Falconer's Wake from the center of the line. He had served in the Navy for 20 years, and he had never been in a fight this one-sided. But he had also never been the kind of man who looked at bad odds and quit. "All ships, scatter formation," he ordered. "Do not try to hold the line. Make them chase you. Every minute we buy is a minute they need." The human ships broke apart and dove into the Valori formation like hornets into a herd. They fired electronic countermeasures that scrambled Valori targeting systems, dropped sensor ghosts that made one ship look like 10, and used the station's mass as cover to loop around and strike from unexpected angles. The Valori, already destabilized by the weakening hive mind, could not coordinate their response. Ships that should have been working together instead fired in isolation, sometimes crossing each other's attack lanes, sometimes hitting nothing at all. Guerrero pushed the Falconer's Wake straight through the center of Kethis' formation, guns blazing, drawing fire from a dozen ships at once. His hull took hit after hit. Armor plating buckled. Sections vented atmosphere. A torpedo struck the port engine, and the ship lurched sideways, but Guerrero's crew patched and rerouted and kept fighting. It was not a battle they could win, but it was a battle they could survive long enough. Below, in the station's guts, Danny's squad reached Service Bay 12. The Crythene courier ship was small, barely bigger than a shuttle, shaped like a flattened oval with stubby engine pods on each side. It was not built for combat. It was built for carrying messages between stars, fast and quiet. It was exactly what they needed. Cole ran to the cockpit and started the launch sequence. Terra helped the Empress aboard. Lena took a position at the bay door, watching the corridor behind them. "We have got about 4 minutes before someone notices this bay is active," Cole called from the cockpit. "And I have never flown a Crythene ship before, so this might be rough." "You will figure it out," Lena said. It was not a question. Danny climbed aboard and strapped in across from Valithara. The Empress sat straight-backed, her hands resting on her knees, completely still. She looked like she was meditating, or maybe she was reaching out with whatever remained of her connection to the hive mind, trying to feel her people across the void. The ship launched. Cole punched through the service bay doors and out into open space, sliding beneath the station's ring and away from the battle above. The courier ship was so small and so unremarkable that not a single Valori vessel noticed it. They were too busy chasing human warships and shooting at sensor ghosts. The jump to the nebula took 4 hours. 4 hours in a cramped cabin with recycled air and no protein bars, which Danny considered a serious oversight in his escape planning. For most of the journey, no one spoke. Lena cleaned her weapon. Cole monitored the ship's systems. Tara checked everyone's vitals. Danny sat across from the Empress and tried not to think about the fact that the future of 2 civilizations was sitting in a ship the size of his mother's living room. Valithara broke the silence first. "You are the strangest creature I have ever encountered," she said. "I get that a lot," Danny replied. "Your species is young and fragile and chaotic. You have no hive mind, no shared consciousness. Every one of you is alone inside your own head, making decisions based on incomplete information, acting on feelings you do not fully understand. It should not work. And yet it does. And yet it does." She paused. "When Kethis built the listening post, he studied your species for years. He concluded that humanity was weak because you lack unity. He believed that a species of disconnected individuals could never stand against the Dominion." "He was wrong," Danny said. "He was. But not for the reason you think. Your strength is not that you are connected. Your strength is that you choose to stand together even though you are not. Every bond you form is voluntary. Every act of loyalty is a decision. That is something the Dominion has never understood. Because we have never had to choose. We simply are." Danny did not know what to say to that, so he said the only honest thing he could think of. "I did not choose any of this. I fell through a floor. And then you chose to stay. You chose to talk to me. You chose to help. Every step after the fall was a choice, Corporal. Do not pretend otherwise." He looked at her for a long time. She looked back. And something passed between them that was not friendship, not exactly, but something close. An understanding between 2 very different creatures who had been thrown together by accident and held together by choice. The nebula appeared on the sensors an hour later, a vast cloud of purple and gold gas that hid a fleet of 600 warships, Matriarch Silara's loyal armada. When the courier ship transmitted the Empress's personal identification code, the nebula lit up. Ships powered on, running lights blazing, weapon systems activating, engines humming to life. 600 vessels, crewed by Valori who had remained loyal to their queen through the chaos of a collapsing hive mind, waiting for this exact moment. Valithara stood as the courier ship docked with the Loyalist flagship. She walked to the hatch and paused. She turned back to Danny. "Thank you, Corporal Voss," she said. Then she stepped through the hatch and onto her ship. What happened next, Danny felt rather than saw. It was like a pulse, a wave of something that moved through the walls of the ship and through his bones. The hive mind reconnected. Across the sector, across the Dominion, every Valori felt their Empress return to the network. The fog lifted, the confusion cleared, and one voice spoke to all of them at once. Valithara's command was simple. "Warlord Kethis is a traitor. Stand down and await judgment." Kethis's fleet collapsed within the hour. Ships dropped their weapons. Commanders surrendered. Entire squadrons switched sides without a shot being fired. The warlord himself tried to run, pushing his flagship to maximum speed toward the outer rim, but his own bridge crew locked him out of the controls and opened the doors for the Loyalist boarding party. It was over. The treaty was signed 1 week later at Calyx Point, not between a captor and a prisoner, but between 2 sovereign powers meeting as equals. The Valori Dominion formally recognized human territorial boundaries for the first time in history. All covert operations in human space were withdrawn. A mutual defense pact was established. Diplomatic channels were opened. And buried in the fine print, almost as an afterthought, was a cultural exchange program that would allow citizens of both species to visit each other's worlds. Ambassador Calloway signed for humanity. Empress Valithara signed for the Dominion. They did not shake hands, because the Valori did not shake hands. But Valithara inclined her head toward Calloway in a gesture that the Krythene observers later said had not been offered to a non-Valori species in over 3,000 years. Danny Voss was promoted to sergeant. He received a commendation, a medal with a ribbon he did not know the name of, and a handshake from Admiral Dunn, who looked at him with an expression that was half admiration and half disbelief. "You are either the luckiest man alive or the unluckiest," the Admiral said. "I have not decided which." Danny also received a new assignment, permanent liaison to the Valori Dominion, stationed at the newly established joint embassy on Calyx Point. The assignment came at the personal request of Empress Valithara. "She asked for me," Danny said to Calloway, who delivered the news. "She insisted, and when the ruler of 1,000 worlds insists, we tend to listen." That evening, Danny sat alone in his new quarters on Calyx Point. The room was bigger than anything he had ever been assigned. It had a real bed, a real window, and a view of the dead star that the station orbited, glowing faintly against the dark. He thought about the floor grate that had crumbled under his boots. He thought about the flashbang that had changed history. He thought about the alien queen who had looked at him like he was the most confusing and fascinating thing in the universe. He thought about all the choices he had made after the fall, every small, scared, stubborn decision that had brought him here. He picked up his communicator and called home. It rang 3 times before his mother answered. "Danny, is that you? Are you okay? I saw the news, and I have been worried sick." "Hey, Ma," he said, "I am fine. But you are not going to believe what happened." He leaned back in his chair, looked out at the stars, and started from the beginning. The year was 2347, and Corporal Danny Voss was having the most boring week of his life. He was stationed on Cathari 4, a gray, dusty moon at the edge of human space, where nothing ever happened. His job was simple: walk patrols, check equipment, file reports, go to sleep, wake up and do it all again. He had joined the military because a recruiter back in Ohio had promised him the galaxy, and instead the galaxy had given him dust and protein bars. His squad leader, Sergeant Lena Marsh, was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a voice that could cut through a sandstorm. She had been in the service for 10 years and had zero patience for complaining. When Danny once said he was bored, she told him that bored soldiers live longer, and he should be grateful. The rest of the squad was small. Cole Abbott was the tech guy, always tapping on his wrist console and muttering about signal frequencies. Tara Briggs was the medic, quiet and steady, the kind of person you wanted next to you when things went wrong. There were 2 others, but they rotated in and out so often that Danny barely learned their names. On the morning everything changed, Lena gathered the squad in the barracks and told them they had a simple job. A relay station on the far side of the moon had gone dark 3 days ago. Command thought it was a power failure. Their task was to walk over, check it out, and fix whatever needed fixing. "Should be 2 hours, Lena said, in and out." Danny grabbed his rifle, his helmet, and a protein bar for the road. He did not grab extra ammunition because nobody grabs extra ammunition for a maintenance call. The relay station was a squat metal building, half buried in the moon's rocky surface. It looked like every other relay station Danny had ever seen, except for one thing. The outer doors had been forced open, not broken from the inside, not worn down by weather, forced. The metal was bent inward, and the locking mechanism had been cut clean through. Lena noticed it too. She held up a fist, and the squad stopped. "Could be scavengers," Cole said. "Could be," Lena replied, but her voice had changed. It was the voice she used when she did not believe what she was saying. They moved inside slowly, weapons up, lights on. The hallways were dark and cold. The station's power was completely dead. As they went deeper, Cole plugged into a wall terminal and pulled up the station's internal layout on his console. Everything looked normal on the first 2 levels. But on the 3rd sub-level, his console showed something that should not have been there. Additional rooms that did not appear on any official blueprint. "Someone built extra space down there," Cole whispered. "It is not on any record." Lena made the call to keep moving. They descended level by level, clearing rooms as they went. The deeper they got, the more wrong things felt. There were markings on the walls that were not human. Equipment that Danny did not recognize. Consoles with symbols that looked like the Valori script he had seen in training briefings. The Valori Dominion was one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They were insectoid, ancient, and they ruled 3 star clusters. Humanity had a non-aggression pact with them, but everyone knew the Valori looked at humans the way a boot looks at an ant. "This is a Valori listening post," Lena said quietly. "They built it inside our relay station." Before anyone could respond, Cole's console lit up with a proximity alert. A Valori patrol ship had just dropped out of low orbit, directly above them. Ground troops were deploying. "Move," Lena ordered. "Back to extraction, now." But the station was a maze in the dark, and Danny was at the back of the group when the floor gave way beneath his feet. He did not have time to scream. One moment he was running, and the next he was falling through a rusted floor grate that crumbled like paper under his weight. He dropped about 3 meters and hit the ground hard, landing on his side. His rifle clattered away, his helmet cracked against the floor, and his vision went white for a second. When his eyes cleared, he was in a room that was not supposed to exist. It was large, dimly lit with a pale blue glow, and filled with Valori technology. Consoles lined the walls, covered in flowing alien script. But Danny barely noticed any of that, because standing in the center of the room were 3 figures. 2 of them were Valori soldiers. They were tall, armored, and already raising their weapons at him. She was taller than the guards, and she wore armor that shimmered like oil on water, shifting between colors with every small movement. On her head was a crest that rose up like a crown, made of the same iridescent material. Her eyes were large, dark, and locked directly onto Danny. He had never seen a Valori like her. She looked like something out of a history file, something old and powerful and not meant to be seen by someone like him. The guards moved toward him. Danny's brain went blank. His training took over, but his training was basic infantry training, not fight 2 alien royal guards in an underground bunker training. He did the only thing he could think of. He pulled the flashbang grenade from his belt and threw it. The blast of light and sound filled the room. The guards staggered. Danny scrambled to his feet, grabbed his rifle by the barrel, and swung it like a bat. The stock connected with the side of one guard's head, and the alien dropped. Danny stumbled backward and hit a console. His elbow slammed into a panel of buttons, and a low hum filled the room. A containment field activated, a wall of shimmering energy that snapped into place around the tall female, locking her in position. The second guard recovered and lunged at him. Danny yanked his sidearm from its holster, fumbled with the stun setting, and fired. The bolt hit the guard in the chest and it collapsed, twitching. Then there was silence. Danny stood there, breathing hard, bleeding from his nose, his hands shaking. The tall female stood inside the containment field, perfectly still, watching him with those dark, unreadable eyes. He keyed his radio with a trembling hand. "Sarge," he said, "I think I caught someone important." He did not know that the female standing in front of him was Empress Valithara, the supreme ruler of the entire Valori Dominion, a civilization that had existed for 10,000 years. He did not know that she had come to this station in secret to shut down an unauthorized intelligence operation built by one of her own warlords. He did not know that the two guards were not her protectors, but her jailers, placed there by a traitor who wanted her gone. All Danny knew was that he had fallen through a floor, thrown a flashbang, and accidentally pressed a button. And that was how a corporal from Ohio started a galactic crisis.